got us this Bloody Mary mix?
Tommy in New Hampshire.
Thank you, Tommy. It's delicious.
I'm in such a good mood.
Yeah, we are surprised by this.
Surprised by what?
By your good mood.
Why?
Because we didn't get many of the things we wanted to get done this weekend, although we had a bunch of social things to do, etc. And yesterday was a long day, and today was an early day, and all the usual things. Usually by now you start. By now you start auditing your life and coming up with the conclusion that it's not worth
That's why
living.
we, as you say, bite the dog.
Right.
And that's why I'm in a good mood. So
Okay.
there you go. But no, I'm in a good mood, and I'm honestly I hate to be that person. Like, I don't want to be the kind of person that just gloats over other people's misery.
Oh yeah, that's right. You're gonna get unfriended by people if you gloat now.
I don't want to
I can't believe the people that I know who have their heads together are saying, like, don't gloat too much. You can't gloat too much on social media, or else I'm gonna unfriend you, and you can't gloat too much.
Oh yeah, no, I'll get kicked out of all the best groups.
Yeah,
if
but
I
how about
gloat, I have to watch these
wait a
groups.
second. How come all the gloating laws changed virtually overnight?
Because they're good people.
I know, they're really good people. Had their person beat Trump by 4 points this Tuesday. I get the feeling there might be some. No, guy, you can't. This is not
kind
This
to
is
the
not
people,
normal.
even if they didn't vote for the same person.
We
be
didn't just
kind.
lose something. This is a change of our democracy. I'm going to be in jail soon in open air prisons. I'm going to be my daughter. My 6th grader is not going to be able to get
I saw
abortions.
someone on Twitter
if she's going to be
posting-
raped, and so it's all the worst things.
I saw someone on Twitter posting that their neighbor who was Hispanic who voted for Trump was being deported today, and their whole
That's
family
fantastic.
was in the driveway crying because they were being deported. And it was like,
Trump won.
I've never seen people so intent on fantasizing imaginary
totally.
scenarios as these people.
Yeah, it's total victim porn. Immediately, and
My neighbors who voted for Trump are being rounded up in the driveway right now. You realize Biden's still president, right? I mean, theoretically, I guess.
So
not really, but kind of.
And people have just been so freaking terrible. Where do we start? With the
I think we
Canadian-
should start, honestly. I think we should start with the FEMA story, because I think
that's
that's
actual hard
the
news,
biggest,
yes.
most important story happening in America right now is that the Daily Wire reported and FEMA confirmed to them in a statement. This is the craziest part. So the Daily Wire reported and FEMA confirmed to them in a statement that this is all true, that FEMA officials were telling rescue workers and aid workers not to visit houses with Trump signage or flags, to tell them what rights they had under FEMA's disaster relief funds and all that stuff during these hurricane things in the South. So, I mean, obviously that confirms all the worst fears of every Republican, Trump worker, whatever, that federal workers who are supposedly nonpartisan have been 100% weaponized against conservatives in every aspect of the executive branch of our government. Every aspect. The IRS, FEMA, the DOJ, everywhere. And honestly, this is the biggest thing, because there was a lot of criticism of Trump and Trump people for saying that, once he was president, he was going to start firing career civil servants, right? Because there's categorizations of federal workers, right? If you're the Secretary of State, obviously you're fired because that's a political role. So you work for this administration, and that's a political position. But if you're just a guy who works in the Department of State, you're not necessarily a partisan political person,
Exactly.
right?
You're
So the
a
idea
civil servant,
the idea of this is supposed to be is to protect people who just work for the government as a job, no matter the party, right? But what we saw in Trump's first term was that he was stymied in achieving a lot of his policy goals because of people like this, who were, quote, the resistance, and were the unofficial resistance people in his government who were leaking stuff to the media, who were, working against Trump's agenda, all these things. And the executive branch isn't really supposed to be able to fire those people because it's supposed to be
You
their
need continuity, some kind of stability,
right?
Even though, yes.
So, and when I posted this Daily Wire story, I saw some people responding like, "Oh, it's one person, it's one rogue employee, they're going after them." And FEMA did say like, "We're taking steps with this employee, blah blah blah." But the problem is this is the result of having a way overpowerful federal bureaucracy and staffing it with ideological partisans from top to effing bottom. You staff your entire government with people who hate Republicans and want them to die. This is the result that you're going to get. And if anybody thinks FEMA was going to clean house and fire this person if Trump wasn't elected, you are absolutely delusional. They are only now attempting to do the bare minimum to try and make it look like their department is nonpartisan because they know Trump is going to come in and fire a bunch of them.
Right. It's also happening in the FBI where we know they're just they're absolutely toxified by all these corrupt people, and they're starting to panic in the FBI, according to DC sources, that heads are going to roll. Of course, we saw what they did to Peter Strzok stuff and all this stuff. These swamp creatures, I'm sorry, are absolutely corrupt and activists, and they feel it's their own now almost birthright to own these positions and to cultivate and curate DC politics how they want to, and F you the voter, and F you, and how dare you anybody tries to disturb that.
Well, right. And if the Democratic Party thinks that like the Latino like restaurant worker that they interviewed today on I forget which Sunday show about why he voted for Trump gives a bleep about whether or not people like Peter Strzok are fired from the federal government, they have another thing coming. Like, you think they're going to be like, "Oh my God, Trump's such an authoritarian. I totally regret my vote now as a restaurant line worker because he fired a bunch of people from the FBI who wanted Trump voters to die." I mean, like, really? And so there's conservative groups who have been going through, they've been FOIA-ing and going through government employee emails to be able to give Trump a list when he's elected of people who have been using their...
This is the list
quote,
he's making.
Yeah, it's a list he's making, okay? Like, it's a list I want him to make, honestly.
Oh, totally.
And nobody except Blue Anon people cares if these people are fired. Because they work for the government and they hate you and want you dead. And they are using every aspect of the federal government that they have control over to try and make that happen.
And they get total cover from their friends in the cul-de-sacs where they live in the media. Totally. Who are happy to facilitate Iron Dome missile defense of accusations that FEMA's effing around from a month ago.
Of course.
This stuff is happening. So here's the Iron Dome working on behalf of this is a Democratic congressman working on behalf of their DC establishment employee friends.
So shameful. I mean, and what's really sad is it's not a surprise. We know that Donald Trump likes to punish whoever he perceives are his enemies. He views America in two worlds, those that support
This is after the Trump officials, hearing from people on the ground, said that Trump people were being ignored.
And those that don't. And those that don't should be punished, should not receive support, should not receive federal aid. And the way what he's doing right now in causing so much misinformation about FEMA, about our recovery efforts, about what the Biden-Harris administration is doing is not
a word of interruption from the MSNBC host right now.
Only shameful. It is dangerous. We have lost hundreds of American lives. We have people that are still missing. Information is critical. And the fact that some folks are trying to cause discord, that are telling people not to talk to FEMA or that recovery efforts aren't going on as planned, is something that I think ranks as one of the worst things.
Every Sunday show picked this up as fact. You're hampering recovery efforts by suggesting with misinformation that the efforts aren't going well.
Yeah, and now I sat down, I watched every Sunday show downstairs today. Do you think, what percentage of them, how many Sunday shows do you think talked about the fact that FEMA was literally being shown to not reach out to Trump supporters because they were Trump supporters, to not help them in the recovery efforts after hurricane?
I only watched or listened to two, and neither of them mentioned it whatsoever.
Nobody is mentioning it? Nobody's
It's actually a
talking about it.
huge scandal.
It's a
really
huge scandal, and it's a huge scandal because they reported the opposite a couple months ago,
Right.
and they called all of us liars
Exactly.
for saying that FEMA or the Biden administration or any part of the government was biased against right-wing people. How dare you?
So
That's
as these people
misinformation.
are
It's
without
dangerous, all these
resources
things.
in tornado or hurricane ravaged areas, you get the FEMA chief saying if you see any Trump stuff, any Trump merch or pieces of flair in the house,
Mhm.
Trump flag, anything you see, Trump Vance yard sign, anything, then ignore the house. Come next one. They're doing precisely what they're not. So people would assume FEMA's on the ground being there, but they're not. They're stepping over the Trump people. The woman, so far, there's one woman so far who's been seen to be the person who orchestrated at least this
Marnie
one
Washington.
case.
Yeah.
She needs to be prosecuted and sent to jail for life, if not there's
Totally.
a death penalty, because that is the dangerous misuse of your office. Horrifically dangerous misuse. And these pieces of garbage.
I mean, yeah, fired is the bare minimum.
The bare minimum.
Like,
of course.
this should be like misusing your government office to persecute your political enemies, especially when they're crying about Trump doing this to them all the time. But again, 100% of the time, it's them projecting stuff onto other people that they're doing.
Totally.
And so that's like why they're scared of a Trump presidency, because they know what they were doing.
Yeah,
And
this
it's
is
the
by the
same
way,
reason why, by the way, all your friends and neighbors that are scared of a Trump presidency and are perceiving other people being happy that Trump won the election as like gloating or somehow being mean to them, know that it's because they would be absolute pieces of bleep if Kamala won. Right?
Of
They
course,
would be
of
gloating
course.
100%.
I just want to go.
And like,
This is FEMA on the same day during the hurricanes.
Mhm.
This is the Director of Education and Training, FEMA's Pride Federal Employee Resource Group. This is a position that is not needed. This person should be fired. Second one.
As Leo mentioned, there were those conversations, not only with migrant trans women. Being a migrant trans woman, there is an undocumented concern. There is also a concern of whether they would trust the places that are offering shelter that are faith-based because of the way they've been responded to in the past. Then if they are accepted, what would happen in terms of misgendering, in terms of bedrooms and bathrooms, etc. And then in addition,
spending time doing this. Meanwhile, there's actual people who need help who have Trump signs and they're being ignored.
yeah, people who got hit by a hurricane who are entitled to FEMA aid, who FEMA's literally stepping over them because they have a Trump sign in their yard. That's what's incredible. And that's, I mean, literally, this is what our friends and neighbors think of us. And I don't know, I find it fascinating because it is so much projection. Like, they go around saying that, like, Trump and Trump supporters hate women and all this stuff, these, like, made-up things. And I posted this thing on Twitter. This dude, I've talked about this before a little bit, but I've never, like, named the dude by name. But it was just too much for me today because I was on Facebook. And this dude who was introduced to us, it's like a famous person, OMG,
Right.
he was so rude to me at this personal friend's party. I mean, this couple's kids, like, nannied our daughter. Like, we were fairly close to them. We lived, like, a 5-minute walk from them, whatever. Anyway, we were buddies with them. We were at their St. Patrick's Day party. This is in 2012, so this is pre-Trump. This is before any unconscionable Republican Trump-backing behavior. This is when Jen Rubin was still a Republican and Tom Nichols was still a Republican and being, this was like Romney Republican days, right? Like, this isn't a bad time. But anyway, this guy who's introduced to us is like this famous guy. We're so lucky to be friends with this celebrity, right? He like started talking all assuming everyone agrees with him, like these Republicans and Rush Limbaugh, am I right? Kind of thing. And I was like kind of laughing it up. Like, well, I'm a Republican. I don't know. Because he was talking bleep about Republicans in a friendly, normal party situation. I was like, well, I'm a Republican. And literally the conversation escalated to the point where he had his hand in my face. And I remember it very strongly, and it sticks out in my mind because I hang out with a lot of Republicans, and Republicans are disproportionately men. I'm around men. Like, I was going at that time to all the Republican city and town committee meetings in the area. I've never, as a woman in the 2020s or the 2010s or whatever, nobody is physical to women really in social settings. Like physically aggressive towards women like that, right? Where you like put your hand in their face or are trying to be like physically, and you say, I mean, the guy's a little dude. You think I could have physically overpowered him in the
Yes,
end
I do.
anyway. But never in a million years would he have done that to you.
No.
Never in a million years. Not just because you're a foot taller than him and probably like, but because he would never do that to a guy. Not in a million years. So he's posting on Facebook today about how like, you know, Trump is such a horrible person and people are gaslighting you who want you to think it's okay that he's president and all this stuff. He's a public figure. He's making a public post. He's going out here and putting it out here that Trump's this horrible person. I've never had a guy get as physical with me as that guy did. And I realize that makes me lucky because, I mean, like, I could have been dating Doug Emhoff and he could have literally friggin' hit me in a social setting. Because liberal guys are pieces of bleep. They suck. Nobody feels as empowered to hit and get physical with women as liberal feminist men. I don't know why it is. It just seems to be true. This is my personal experience. This is my lived reality, right, guys? Like, it's just crazy to me. And it's crazy to me that you're like the most physical to conservative women, the most willing to try and physically intimidate a woman because she like doesn't agree with you about something.
Well, and it's very interesting. Remember, this was specifically about Rush Limbaugh calling Sandra Fluke a slut for needing the government to buy all of her birth control, which was cost like $6 a month.
Right, and then Rush Limbaugh said we should get to watch if we're going to buy her.
It cost like $6 a month or something. But we had to. She's 20. She was 27 back then, and she needed the taxpayers to buy her birth control for her so she could have sex at her college where she was 27 for some reason.
Stop.
And the point is that they felt more empowered and qualified to speak in defense of that woman than you, a woman who has actual concerns about this, would be.
Right.
So because that gave them all the license they needed, because you were on the wrong side of their person, you weren't on the Fluke side, then you lost suddenly your gender and they could yell at you. And that was it. They did it also for women. So it was just classic. I have to yell at you for women. I have to treat you badly for women in the larger, case of it. And so now that gives me, I can be mean to you because I'm doing it in the vein of helping other women. So I can get in your face and, kind of make a scene at a what was a St. Patrick's Day party.
Right, we're just
where there's
having
only
fun
some
of the St.
speech
Patrick's
that's
Day
allowed
party.
to happen in the room, and I get to decide what speech that is. And if some little blonde chick says something that I'm allowed to proclaim my nobility around through yelling at her and defending a woman who doesn't live anywhere near here,
I know.
then I'm going to do that, and I'm going to make a scene at that party because my making a scene is more important than having respect for the host, having respect for a stranger woman you don't know. And like it's so interesting. I mean, I can tell you one thing,
but it's just fascinating to me because then to go on Facebook, to be that guy, to be the guy who's willing at a like non-political event, just somebody's random St. Patrick's Day party with someone you don't know there, to like start this like physical altercation with a woman at somebody's party, like, and then to go on Facebook and be like, oh my God, Trump, such a terrible degradation of our politics. Like, can you believe this horrible person? It's just fascinating to me. Just own it that you're a piece of bleep. Just own it that you like pushing women around and you suck. And like, just, I mean, like, if you don't like Trump, fine, don't like Trump. But like to pretend you have some moral high ground to stand on as like a big defender of women is like pathetic to me. It's so insane and backwards and upside down.
And it's a lack of introspection because, Ike Turner also thought he was the good guy. Ike Turner had reasons too, He absolutely did.
Right. Sure, O.J. Simpson thought he had reasons.
Absolutely. But like at the end of the day, you are the bad guy that you think you're protecting these women from. You're the very problem, creepy people. These are not, once again, I will take incoming for this because I didn't intervene, but there was no intervention necessary.
No,
Alice was
it fine.
absolutely.
I had a great time. I laughed all the way home.
She was
We had-
absolutely not
like-
intimidated whatsoever. I'm not a strong
I just
guy or a
remember
fighter, but I can tell you that had I intervened and like it's something happened between me and this guy, if I had hit him, it would be a hate crime. Doesn't work the other way. I can tell you that.
Anyway, he's fine.
So
he's
along
still
the
famous.
lines,
He's
along the
doing
lines
great.
of,
I was fine. We had a great time.
you
at
know
the
who
party. It was not a
white
big
heroes also love, white
Mhm.
saviors also love protecting, or getting to yell at, in the name of
black men.
Oh yeah. Also in the name in white savior progressives, the moment they give them a chance, please give me the chance. Please give me the chance. This is Jay Michelson, who's this puny prick, who was on CNN, and who's the black guy?
Sure, Michael Singleton.
Michael Singleton, who's a black correspondent. They're talking about.
He's sort of a conservative, but like not a Trumpy conservative,
Right.
really.
So they're talking about, the black guy starts talking about how it's not fair that men, trans men, obviously play on women's teams, and listen to this total bitch. You just lose it. This just reminds me of your bitch, Alice, from the party.
I think there are a lot of families out there who don't believe boys should play girls' sports.
They're not boys. I'm not going to listen to transphobia at this table. I am not going to listen to you call a trans girl a boy.
Are you going to allow me to finish my explanation?
When you use a word that's a slur.
You are allowed to step
It's
all
a
over.
slur.
You are allowed to step all over the black man.
They're
As
not
long as
boys.
it's- You can step all over the black man in this. If you're doing it in this context, absolutely silence him. You'll take the floor from him immediately. Tell him, set the rules at the table. I'm not going to listen to transphobia at this table. You know, he's now the host. He's now telling the black man, you're forbidden from doing this. Which
Well, don't you think, by the
I
way-
think that's supposed to be against the rules. Their rules.
Don't you think, by the way, that the Ryan Gardowski situation where he told what's his name?
Mehdi
Hassan,
yeah.
who's paid by Qatar to promote propaganda on CNN. He told him he hopes his pager doesn't go off, and he was immediately banned from CNN forever. And they like apologized profusely to everybody who had to see that kind of hatred and bigotry on CNN. Like,
which was
don't
actually-
you think that empowered psychos to think that they can like take a stand in the middle of the panel and like
Exactly.
shut down all debate?
Right, exactly. Now, Abby Phillip should have said, okay, time out, guys. Jay Michelson, you're a bitch. You need to leave because you don't make the rules here. But instead, this poor dude, Shermichael, whatever,
Singleton
has to deal with, like, a Monty Python level absurd scene.
Boys should play girls' sports.
They're not boys. I'm not going to listen to transphobia at this table. I am not going to listen to you call a trans girl a boy.
Are you going to allow me to finish my explanation?
When you use a word that's a slur, I'm going to interrupt. That's not how it is. They're not boys. They're not boys. They're not playing girls' softball.
By the way, how does he even get to be in this discussion if we're not allowed to? Oh, okay, we have one clause that Jay wanted to add. We can't debate whether or not they're boys. Well, there's nothing to talk about then.
Yeah.
No, they're not boys.
because
No.
everyone thinks girls should be allowed in girls' sports.
Right, I think.
That's not how it is. They're not boys. They're not boys. They're not playing girls' softball. I'm not going to sit there and listen to that.
Let's reset for a second because, look, this is a...
Nobody has to reset, but the bitch who's saying, we're not doing this at this table. They're not boys.
really heated issue, right? And Shermichael, I know you. I know that you understand that people have different views on this. I think out of respect for Jay, like, let's try to talk about this in a way that is respectful.
Out of respect for Jay,
You have to
assume
use
an absolutely absurd premise to start this.
out of respect for Jay, we have to use the insane language of assigned male at birth because you have to pretend that you believe that doctors randomly assign gender with no biological basis whatsoever, and that we then just force children to grow up in a random gender that a doctor chose to assign to them. That's literally what that means. If you say assigned male at birth, assigned female at birth, you're opting in to the premise that when the baby is born and the doctor says it's a boy or it's a girl, they're just making it up.
Well, right. And you're also looking...
Which is an insane premise.
Exactly. And you're also looking at the huge, tall, broad-shouldered guy and saying, what? I don't know. I have no idea. What do you mean? Could be anything. What do you mean? I don't know.
So let me rephrase this since I'm being targeted here.
I don't.
There,
you're not.
no,
Just
it's
to be
okay.
clear, you are not being.
But
targeted.
I am. But it's okay.
I'm specifically saying
okay.
that I know that you are not intending to be transphobic.
But that's the thing. I know that you're not intending to be transphobic, but Jay's just very sensitive. It's not my fault that Jay's disabled. You know, it's not my fault that you guys brought somebody on here who wasn't ready to have an actually intellectually honest conversation.
Well, right, and it's also sort of this weird, like, stolen valor being offended that liberals do, where they take, like, this premise, like, just be nice, right? And that's the premise on which the entire trans movement is built, is like, can't you just be nice to people, right? So it's taking this premise, it's like, okay, so-and-so literally has a really bad mental disorder where they're in complete distress about their body. They believe they're the opposite gender. They're going through this whole, mental health thing. Like, can't you just be nice to them and, like, call Bob, Beth, call Bob Beth, like, just to make him feel good because this is gonna, like, hurt him mentally. Like, can't you just be nice to him, right? And so it takes that, and then it takes this dude who's, like, not a trans guy. He's, like, this old white dude who's on the CNN panel and is richer than us and whatever else. Like, he's the epitome of privilege walking around here. And he gets to now, on behalf of trans people, none of whom are named by name, but who Michael Singleton has supposedly offended by calling trans women boys, he gets to be so offended that he can't sit here on the panel and listen to this kind of transphobia. He's not offended. He's supposedly not mentally ill, so that it hurts him if somebody uses the wrong pronouns.
Well, right, and that's
and so he's taking the, like, can't you just be nice to the crazy person and tell them that they're actually Napoleon so that it doesn't upset them? And he's not wearing that. Like, no, I believe that this guy's literally Napoleon, okay?
Well, he's saying that we have to change the scope of the argument to exclude things like gender, science, body type, all the facts we have to now exclude and get in go so small with this debate, which is supposed to be a debate, that you have to cede to be that there's no such things as boys as girls.
Yeah, no.
So we're starting with I already won. He should have just said I've done here. I've won. It's amazing that he has to make the parameters so narrow to his side that no, all of your stuff, by the way, has been dismissed. We're not including all of your stuff. You're not allowed to.
I'm not going to sit here and listen to that.
Yep.
No, that I'm not. But he wants to sit here and
transphobic. I'm saying you're using a phrase that you know.
So the way regular people interpret it,
that's not regular people. That's not regular people. There's no consensus that these are actually boys.
There's no consensus that these are boys. No consensus.
Imagine that world where he's living. That's not regular people. No. That's another offense. He's just throwing flags. That's what the left does. They just throw flags. No, regular. What's that supposed to mean?
By the way, that boxer in the Olympics, Imani Khalif, somebody leaked the report. It's a dude. Right. It's a dude with a disorder that made his genitals not fully developed at birth. And so he lives in a country where that's, like, probably not accepted. And he was born with genitals that, like, were not clearly male. And so he was raised as a girl, and that's sad for him. But he has XY chromosomes, and he went through male puberty and is a fully developed guy who has taken nothing to suppress the testosterone that's in his system.
There's like a half dozen other people we all know it's BS. But the funny thing is that this guy, Jay Michelson, he's an author, obviously, and he's got all sorts of important things.
Aren't we all?
He should so be easily, like what he's saying right now, he's so equipped to out-debate the table. They'll just out-debate the table. Show them all. Use your genius. But no, he doesn't want the debate to happen. No, we're not allowed to. No, no debate can happen.
This whole thing about trans girls is a canard. We're talking about a tiny, tiny sliver of the population.
That may be the
case, we're using that.
But my point in terms of its effectiveness.
Okay, so now we're getting closer to where we're seeing his problem is. It's not happening at all. But if it is, that's good. I mean, but if boys are going to other teams, then we have to, because we have to be compassionate, because they need their health care. In other words, we have to pay for all these surgeries, including in jail. Mm-hmm. This is, by the way, if you're not that into politics and you see this debate, you say, okay, which is the candidate who will just roll a grenade into this debate? And so shut up.
Well, and I saw the same thing happen on the Sunday shows. Chris Christie was talking about this, and he was saying, like, the most effective ad for Trump was this ad that, like, we've talked about, that Kamala had this position that transgender illegal immigrants in prison should get free transgender surgeries at taxpayer expense. It was an accusation that people didn't believe was real when Trump first made it. It was fact-checked against him by a bunch of places because it sounded too absurd. So they just assumed it wasn't true, but they have her in her own words saying it. It's absolutely a position that she took. It's the real position of a lot of people on the left, and it was an incredibly effective ad, him going out there and saying she's for they, them, and Trump's for you.
Of course.
And the Kamala campaign denied that this was happening. They talked about this, and Chris Christie said it on which station is he on? Was he on
ABC.
Meet the Press? Okay.
He's on this week.
Yeah, this week with George Stephanopoulos. But so he's out there saying it, and they're like, oh, well, Republicans made up this thing to attack trans people. And he's like, no, Republicans didn't start this.
Right.
You guys started this.
Yes.
Right? And this has been a thing where they've, like, tried to say this. Oh, Tucker Carlson just decided one day. He just woke up and decided to attack trans people. Matt Walsh just woke up one day and decided to go after trans people. Like, no. You guys started this. You guys pushed this. You guys put drag queens in my kid's library. You guys were reading my kid books about mermaid children and telling them they could pick their gender. You guys, like, this was you. You guys did this. Now own it. If that's your policy, then own it. But they did not walk back this policy ever, because they were scared of their own constituents to do so. And there's people on the Biden team, by the way, in this, who talked to the Atlantic anonymously, who say, like, oh, well, Biden wouldn't have let that attack stand. He would have responded to that. Biden had the psychos in the White House topless, shaking their fake boobs around on the White House lawn. Like, you don't tell me that Biden would have walked this back. This is the real position of the Democratic Party. It's not my fault that it's such an insane position that you've alienated 60% of the country with it.
Right. Let me finish Jay's thing here.
Get to your point.
My point in terms of its effectiveness. Regular people with children look at these things and they say, you know what? This is a bit too far. I do not agree with this. I don't like this. I think Democrats are going way too much to the left on social issues. They're uncomfortable with it. A lot of people believe that. A lot of families believe that. You may disagree with that reality, but that's why Republicans kept running those ads over and over and over again, because they saw the metrics suggested that they were working.
In those ads over and over again, and using rhetoric like you just used, saying this is boys playing girls sports. First of all, we're talking about 5 people in the entire country.
You would prefer?
We're talking about trans girls being allowed to play with the people who are in their gender. And if you don't believe, you don't have to listen to me. Listen to the American Medical Association, the American Psychological Association.
The American Medical Association.
This is not about the
Guys,
right?
just one second.
And once again, shut up, Abby. Once again, see, I yelled at the black woman because that's the only person I feel.
You like to silence people with less privilege than you.
Well
known. Well, that's why I'm wearing my Step on Wife
like
shirt
the
today.
left does. He escapes to these absolutely corrupted institutions. The American Medical Association. Give me an effing break. What's next? The American Academy of Pediatrics. It's like using the SPLC. Those are all over. Okay.
Well, right, and that's like, honestly, that's why they went out and did this ideological capture game with all these institutions. But that's exactly why they've now ruined them. Like, there's so much bemoaning by the left of the fact that people no longer believe public health institutions, but, like, they did that during COVID. Right? Like, the American Academy of Pediatrics, whatever credibility they had after being wrong about everything for decades, like, is now up in smoke because we know they're ideologically captured. It's funny, like, I had the conversation with our pediatrician the last time I was there for one of the kids' appointments, because she was asking me, like, oh, have you introduced to the baby all these different allergens yet? You know, like because you're supposed to introduce the top allergens within the first year to make sure that your kid like has an immunity to them and can eat them. 14 years ago, when our daughter was born, they were telling you the exact opposite. Delay introducing commonly allergenic foods until after age 3 to prevent an allergy from forming. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Remember they told us, don't give your kid peanut butter, don't give them nuts, all this stuff, which obviously was counterintuitive, and we did not do that because we're not idiots. But there's no ownership for any of these institutions when they're wrong about stuff, including the public health institutions, which is why nobody believes them, which is why you should not trans your kid just because the American Academy of Pediatrics tells you that this is like well-established science, because 10 years ago they were giving all the kids allergies on purpose because they thought that was the established science. So, I mean, I don't know. You can believe them if you want, but they're wrong all the freaking time, and they have zero accountability when they're wrong all the time. Like, that's the problem. And that's the problem with Fauci and the health departments in the government and all these things. Like, that's, I don't know. I've had some good conversations with people about, like, RFK and being involved in health and the government and all this stuff. And it's like, he's not anti-vaccine per se. I'm not even anti-vaccine. I get my kids, like, almost all the vaccines. Not 100%, but almost all of them. And, like, he just says he's going to expose the data. If the data is as great as you guys say it is, then it's going to prove that kids should take vaccines. So, like, if he's Mr. Transparency and he goes in here and makes you guys expose the data for how great vaccines are, then that should be, like, good for vaccine uptake, right?
I think that one of the things that the American people are not going to be comfortable with is incentivizing the green lighting of these vaccines. And that there is incredible profit motive for people working in the healthcare institutions and the bureaucracy to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a really big fan of vaccines, actually. Like, I think vaccines are very good.
But still, the fact that there's a big profit motive is an interesting thing. It's like if you're getting a check from Pfizer, that's...
Oh, of course. And I totally think, like, we're one of the only countries in the world that allows pharmaceutical companies to advertise on TV. And, like, J.D. Vance talked about that on Rogan. I thought it was a really fascinating discussion.
Do you remember when they didn't?
I feel like I do. When did that start?
Right around Viagra time.
Oh, yeah, like Viagra and Cialis commercials.
I think, as a matter of fact, if I'm not wrong, you guys can tell me if I'm wrong.
That's because having a limp dick is not really a medical issue. It's just a... Like,
but I
have a bigger, harder dick. I mean, like,
Jesus,
I'm sorry.
Alice.
Sorry, you can bleep me out after. But I'm just
Oh,
saying.
great,
like,
that's what I want to do.
Well, no, but like, who goes to their doctor and says that versus like if you see an ad on TV, then you're going to be more likely to do that,
yeah,
right?
You still needed your doctor, though.
No, you still need your doctor, but obviously, like, the reason why you would advertise that is because it's like not something you would necessarily, without an ad, would you go to your doctor and like talk about that and be like, I have a medical issue where my sex isn't as good anymore.
Without an ad, no.
Without an ad, without that being advertised, of course not.
Right,
because
which is why it made so much sense.
Right, because it's honestly like a lifestyle improving drug,
but
not
like
a drug for like a disease or an illness.
Yeah, but I also...
It's recreational, honestly, at the end of the day. Can we be honest?
Yeah. But I told you that it, like, in 97, right around the time, there was a... I think that Bob Dole came out with an ad with Britney Spears, if my mind is not right. But I told you that my equipment just stopped working with this girlfriend, with Supple, who was in college.
Sounds like user error, Supple.
It was user error. Well, it totally was. She was very cold and on whatever, and then suddenly I started having self-doubts, and she was like, she was awful. It was where I'd gone from the girl from Malden to Supple was such an incredible... So anyway, once you it was like Chuck Knobloch. Once I had doubts, then it was very hard to, like, once you get it gets in your mind. So I was like, eventually, like, somehow we worked through it, but it was a good, like, 5 months where it was like a horrible, like, a nightmare, because I was only like 23 or whatever. But then it kind of fixed itself. But later on, when I was like a single guy,
it went away.
And then Viagra came around, etc., like that. I was like, I need to be as effective as possible, even when I'm as drunk as possible, at all times. So because a lot of times if you're a guy, that's the first thing to go.
It's a performance enhancing drug.
Yes, it absolutely is. So it's funny. So I told the doctor then, in the early or late 90s or whatever, right around 2000, my doctor, who's a woman, I'm like, okay, I need to, and she said, you can't ask for it that way. She said you have to ask for it in a different way.
You have to say you have a medical condition.
Exactly. That's what she essentially said to do. So I rephrased it right there in front of her, and she said, okay, here you go. And then I became a juicer like Canseco and everybody else. But like, yeah, there is, obviously it's a huge money maker. Obviously, like for like for everybody. But it's amazing. We'll get back to that at some point. But there is, yes, I want people to look into this and look at this.
But like, can I say one more thing on like the pediatrician JD Vance conversation, because this was interesting, and I don't think I said this on the show. I think I just said it offline to you, didn't I? About the pediatrician and JD Vance.
I don't know what you're talking about.
About Palestine, East Palestine,
Oh yeah, that
Ohio.
she didn't know anything. Yeah.
So it was I don't stop me, you guys, in the chat if I said this on the show before, but I don't think I did. I think I just said it to people outside the show. So I was talking to my pediatrician. I had the baby there. She knows I'm a Republican, but she's not, obviously, at all. But it was funny because she said to me, like, we were talking about, I said I don't want to feed the kids rice cereal because rice is shown to have higher levels of arsenic just because of whatever. And like, I was saying that, you know, I worry about levels of heavy metals and toxins in our food supply and all this stuff. And she was like, oh yeah, it's a really big problem. And she agreed with me about the arsenic in the rice and suggested like oat cereal has similar nutritional content without the risk of heavy metals and blah, blah, blah. So we had this conversation. I said, oh, by the way, you should listen. I said, I know it's not really your thing, but JD Vance was on Joe Rogan and was talking about the chemical exposure in East Palestine, Ohio, and how they wanted to do a baseline study and they couldn't get government funding for it because they wanted to like examine what the effects of like the vinyl chloride and all these chemicals were over time in people's systems from like exposure from the groundwater and everything. And she was like, well, what did JD Vance say to that? Because he and Trump like are like against the environment, basically. And I was like, no, that was JD Vance saying that. Like, he wants to get the chemical exposure levels for people so that they have the right to sue these corporations for exposing them to chemicals because they're actually for the environment, like him and Trump and RFK Jr. and all these people. Like, they're very concerned about chemicals in the environment. And I said, you know, it's not the same as the global warming thing. That's whatever. But in terms of like toxins in the food supply, they're all about that. And she could not believe it. Like, she didn't know that that was a thing. She thought Republicans, corporations, chemicals, hate the environment. They just love all the corporations and like want to poison everybody because they're mean Republicans, and they just like the corporations getting to poison people because that's how it goes. And that level of misperception about what Republicans are and what they stand for in this day and age, where like we have the most anti-corporate Republican ticket ever heading to Washington, D.C. It's just fascinating to me because they love to talk about misinformation, but it's like they have a perception of reality that is so off base from all the conservatives I know and the things they care about and talk about. It's just fascinating to me.
We need to get to the chat.
All right, we're heading to the chat, and then we'll do, as long as Peter stays happy, we'll do a little Patreon show stuff as well. Good song.
Thank you. You know what it is?
Silver and Gold.
You know who sings it?
Burl Ives.
There we go.
Don't test my Christmas song knowledge.
Hi, Steve from Merrimack.
Hey, Steve.
I don't know where Wilhelm Gottfried Leibniz from Gloucester gets his balls big enough to dictate what goes on the show and what doesn't. But you keep reading all the polls you want, Alice. I enjoy it very much. And it's not like Tom is just a bystander during these conversations. He talks about that crap too. But thank you. On another note, these people that are making these videos that we're making fun of and everything, it's just abundantly clear. None of these people have like an actual job to go to, unless I'm missing something. You know, I've worked for big corporations my whole career. If I was making stupid ass videos like these people, I would probably hear about it at work.
Mm-hmm.
Or I would be, as I like to say, invited to succeed elsewhere from the company. It's just people with too much time on their hands. And quickly, let me just say, Mrs. Steve from Merrimack was not exactly happy with the results of Tuesday night. And she actually doesn't even call him Trump. He's just the Antichrist now, which is kind of endearing. But so very pissed off Tuesday night, went to bed, woke up 7 o'clock in the morning and went to go work one of her 3 full-time jobs in a foul mood. But by the time she came home, she was in a very good mood, and we had a pleasant evening. And it's because she has things to occupy her day.
Right.
This political shit isn't her entire life. I mean, these people are effing losers. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm glad that Steve said that, invited to succeed elsewhere, because that's what we're talking about with these bureaucrats.
Totally.
In the civil servants, etc. Absolutely. Trump needs to invite them to succeed elsewhere, loudly and immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to get all the heartbreaking and all the horrific nightmare scenarios from all these people. He needs to have his surrogates keep going to the alternative media, which is really the new primary media, which is Joe Rogan and his friends, and keep talking.
And I want to talk in the Patreon show about Vivek talking about Trump's deportations on the Sunday shows, because that was also good, talking about invited to succeed elsewhere.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Hey, Steve.
Hey, Steve.
I wasn't sure if you heard any of Tucker's election night coverage. He had on a bunch of people like Elon and Vivek. And one person he had on who I found very interesting was Miranda Devine, who blew the lid off of the Hunter Biden laptop story.
I love her.
What she had said that when it came to polling, a lot of the Trump voters who she talked to and interviewed said that they were afraid to tell the polling people who they were voting for, and they were really, really concerned with sharing their own personal information because they felt like these people at the polling agencies were going to send their information to local authorities or to the FBI so that they would be investigated and unfortunately probably arrested like the January 6th people.
Mm-hmm.
So they were giving the poll people false information. They were telling people that they were going to vote for cackling Kamala Harris because they feared the retribution and the retaliation that we've seen the Democrat Party do over the last 3, 4, 8 years when it comes to anybody who supports Trump. So again, just another reason why the people who own and run these polling companies or work for polling companies are just so full of it, and we are complete lemmings if we believe in any poll that's out there. Thank you.
I mean, the reality is that the polls just weren't that off.
They weren't?
No.
It feels like they were to me.
They were off. Pollsters were off on average 1 to 2 points, which is a normal polling error that they're off by every year.
She got blown out in a lot of places.
Nate Silver, who runs the average of the polls that are out there, had as the single most likely scenario that Trump would sweep all 7 swing states.
Mm-hmm.
He did. I mean, that's what he had as the most likely scenario. I talked about it on this show, was that Trump would sweep all 7 swing states.
These Yipe are fantastic.
I'm glad you like them.
They're bigger and better than any.
I prefer Huggies wipes. I'm a Huggies.
Have you ever
lady.
used these, Alice?
I've used those.
There's a lot more surface space.
They're too fluffy for me.
No.
I feel like when I'm wiping a baby's dirty butt, that the Huggies wipes are more substantive. That's my feeling. But anyway, what I'm saying is to you is that, like, the scenario that happened is the scenario that Nate Silver said was the most likely to happen based on the literal polls. So I don't know what people want from the polls, but they were pretty freaking close to reality. A bunch of polls had Trump up nationally, including like the NBC poll right before the end of the election. This is not like they were off by like a point. I mean, like, what do you want? They're not perfect, but that's pretty damn close to reality.
Steve from Merrimack.
Hey, Steve.
I really enjoyed the sound cuts you played of the crazy moonbat alleged political analyst lady
yes.
who bought a bottle of champagne on election day. I think it's a very, very true story. I know in my experience, every time I go to the liquor store, the owner asks me why I'm buying what I'm buying.
Yes.
All the
Happens all
time.
the time. Why are you buying that enormous bottle of Jack Daniels, Steve, from Merrimack? I'm going home to get shit-faced, Mr. Liquor Store owner. Hi-oh! Thank you. I've been going to the Merrimack Liquor Store for 22 years. The only words that have been exchanged during that entire time have been, here's your change, and I say, thank you.
Right.
That's it.
That's because the
Thanks a
liquor
lot.
store people know what's up. I think we talked about this on the All You Can Eat podcast, which
Mhm.
we need to record an episode of very soon. But I don't want the liquor store people asking me if I'm getting the usual
Yeah,
or anything
you
else.
don't
Y'all
like
like
the usual.
guys, just know
But
that
we're
we're
not-
both pretending that I don't go here.
But we're-
Okay, like
yes.
just help me out.
What we're not doing is putting a spotlight on the fact that anybody has a problem. That's certainly what we're not doing whatsoever. But she was the best. I mean, that liquor store lady was absolutely. She's just the best thing that anybody's ever heard. I mean, that she was so good. Oh man. Should I play a little bit of it from my TikTok? You get Tom Shattuck's commentary right in there. Who wouldn't enjoy that? There you go.
We're close. And I didn't care. And I walked out with my bottle of champagne and happily walked.
Hold on.
As I said, I'm a
Nope.
political analyst. I'm telling you right now, the numbers are there. She's taking this election. And then I said to him, you realize, and he didn't tell me who he voted for, but of course I knew. And I said, you do realize you wasted your vote, right?
Sorry. But that is from my TikTok. That has gotten 1.6 million views, and I invite you to go to TikTok and sign up. But who cares if the Chinese get your stuff? Who cares? It's over soon anyway. The world's coming to an end. It's about time. We got to get around. Who cares? Just follow me on TikTok. Whatever you do on TikTok, follow or friend me, whatever it is. I would really appreciate that.
Good morning. I want to get your take on this whole Seth Moulton stance that he's taken, and I want to read his quote here briefly.
Yeah.
I stand firmly in my belief for the need for competitive women's sports to put limits on the participation of those with the unfair physical advantages that come with being born male. Now, what's your opinion on why he came out and said that? I went and took a quick peek and see that he ran unopposed this year. And back in 22, it looks like he got 65% of the vote. So my guess is he did not come out because he read the tea leaves and thought that perhaps he would be in jeopardy the next time he ran. Do you think he's more of a true moderate Democrat, or is he playing defense here, kind of reading the tea leaves to see what might happen 2 years from now when he's up for re-election? Let me know your take, guys. I appreciate it. Love the podcast. Talk to you later.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Thank you. I think that he is trying to catch the wind and make a movement around himself to be more moderate and be the go-to person. He's already on the bleep list in
So
Congress.
remember, dude.
He's already on the bleep list in Congress because he tried to overthrow Pelosi. So he's got no friends on her caucus.
But remember, he was running for president briefly, too. Do you remember that? So I think he wants to stake out a place for himself in the Republican Party as, like...
Democratic Party.
He wants to stake out a place for himself in the Democratic Party as, like, the other kind of Democrat. Like, I'm the type of Democrat that, like, the Latino men can vote for because I'm not a raging pussy who's going to let boys play against your daughters in sports and beat them up.
Right.
Like...
Yeah.
No, but I think he's trying to make a national play. Is what
Absolutely.
it is. Like, I don't. Obviously, politically, for him in Massachusetts, there's nothing to gain by coming out against boys and girls sports.
Well, right.
For a Massachusetts voter, no. And actually, it's funny because I want to talk about this on the other side, but I saw a post in my Massachusetts homeschool group where somebody was looking for places to move in Massachusetts that are not hateful. Because they were looking for like a safe space for their they-them child. And a bunch of people were saying like Salem and Newburyport, but they were like, but don't pay attention to Seth Moulton. He doesn't represent us and like all this stuff. I bet he'll be primaried, honestly, after that because he had staff quit. He had all this stuff. But
It's worth a gamble. You know. That's
No, but I think he's trying to make a national play. Like,
No, of
he's
course
not
he is.
making a Massachusetts play. He's making a
no,
national
he's doing.
play.
He's where Chris Murphy is on guns. Seth Moulton is going to be on trans stuff and protecting girls.
Mhm.
And why not? It's let's see if it works.
Hi, Steve from Merrimack.
Hey, Steve.
Just want you to know that I am completely unafraid of the 4B movement, even if it happens in my own home. You know why? Because as long as I have a hand and a phone, I'll be right as rain. Ow!
Oh my God, I don't even know
It's
what
not
that
the
means.
same, Steve. Jeez.
What's different?
You don't think it's different? Well, then that's fine with me, then.
Hey, Tom and Alice. Just want to say,
Charlie from Ipswich, Alice.
still basking in the afterglow of the election. And now that all the talking heads on the left are going crazy over, what happened really, how do you feel about the fact that they're saying that we didn't know Kamala enough? Which seems to be a thing that they're throwing out there now. If we only had more Kamala, that, she would have won. But it seems like every time you look at the polls, the more she talked, the more she went down. It seems like they just don't seem to get what really happened. And they're in kind of a denial phase. And I'm not sure what's going to happen from here on out with the Democratic Party, but they seem to be such elitists and don't understand what really happened. Just wanted to know your opinion. Thanks.
Thanks, Charlie. I agree 100%. I mean, like, I, for one, love this. I would love for them to double down on everything that they did wrong and believe that the reason why they lost is they didn't do enough of it. That'd be great for Republicans. I tend to think they're going to moderate. Nothing in politics is forever. I've said this to you 1,000 times, Tom. You're probably sick of hearing it from me. But in 2016, the belief was that Hillary Clinton could not lose because the Electoral College favored Democrats. That's why the blue wall is called the blue wall, because it was believed that with all the union white working class Democrats that were in these states like Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania, and that Republicans couldn't win those states. It was just not possible, right? Like, the Electoral College had a fundamental advantage for Democrats built into it. That's what they believed 8 years ago. And so, I don't know, obviously, the temper tantrums in 2016 about how then, Trump won and the Electoral College was fundamentally racist and all this stuff was that was a bit rich. But that's fine. Then Trump lost in 2020 and now he won again in 2024. People change. People vote for different people one election over the other.
Mm-hmm.
Or they don't vote at all one election over the other.
The tweet, by the way, saying to listen to us live just went out from me. So there you go.
I'm sorry about
Even though it took 45 minutes to load for some reason.
I'm sorry about that. Anyway, but to get back kind of to Charlie and Ipswich's point about where they went wrong and any self-reflection or any of this, I mean, they're either going to learn the lessons of all this or they're going to, they're going to disappear. But I tend to think there are probably some people at least are going to learn some lessons from this and do something, because this is nothing in politics is permanent, and they're going to, we could be probably in 2 years, the Republicans are probably going to lose the midterms, as incumbent parties almost always do, especially now that Republicans are very reliant on a voter base that is not as good voters, that are much lower propensity voters. I mean, I tend to think that, we'll be having a different conversation 2 years from now, but that's also fine. I forget. I think Charlie from Ipswich made one other point that I wanted to address, but now I forget what it was.
It seems like they just don't seem to get what really happened. And they're in kind of a denial phase. And I'm not sure what's going to happen from here on out with the Democratic Party, but no Kamala enough.
Oh, Okay.
Oh, didn't know her
Would you-
F. I know what else I was gonna address was the campaign long enough, because Charlamagne the God made that point on ABC also today, was saying like she did the best she could with this 100-day campaign. It was too short. She couldn't make the case to the American people, and a lot of Democrats are saying that like she had such a shortened window, she couldn't do a real campaign, all this stuff. And we should talk about this more on the other side and like the political people, but the campaign wasn't too short for Kamala. This was too long a campaign for Kamala. If the election had been held in August, she probably would have won it. If she could have avoided interviews and avoided being out there and avoided having to answer any questions.
Yeah.
She lost because she wasn't able to run out the clock.
Well, right. And
it was too long a campaign. Like, the longer this campaign would have gone, if this campaign had been 3 months longer, Trump would have won 40 plus states. Like, she's terrible.
Yes.
But we'll talk about that more on the other side.
Steve from Merrimack.
Hey, Steve.
The news that the Harris campaign is $20 million in debt after having $1 billion in the coffers because of all these last-minute concerts they tried to put on, and in desperation. Am I the only person? That reminds me of the dot bomb era when all these companies were starting to fail, and in order to save themselves, a few of them bought Super Bowl ads, thinking that would do the trick. Man, oh man, what a waste! And poor Alanis Morissette got canceled out because they needed to save money at the very end.
Bounced, yeah.
Dang.
Oh well.
Yeah. No, it is funny. And Trump, of course, today on Truth Social offered to pay off the campaign's debts.
That's so magnanimous of him. I love him.
Which is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Give us more of that. Whoever's writing those kind of tweets, give us more of that.
Thank you so much for listening. As I said, let's get to the other side. Patreon folks, stay right where you are. Do not leave. We're going to talk more about where the campaign's messed up, how the political class is taking this defeat, whether, as Bernie Sanders said today on multiple political shows, is this the fault of billionaires that Kamala lost? We're going to talk about all that and more. Stay on there, patreon.com/burnbarrel, or if you like the free show, burnbarrelpodcast.com.